On this episode of Talkin Nerdy, we hear from TrulyRawesome about building and maintaining friendships through Twitch streaming.
I think it helped that when I started, it was about friendship. Like, it was about creating a space where I was being entertaining for and with my friends as we were doing something together. I'm very grateful and very appreciative of what that's become, because it's a big part of my life now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Talkin Nerdy on Outside of the Box. And I'm sure that everybody if you've watched these, you've noticed a pattern lately, that I've been having a lot of Twitch streamers on. And I mean, frankly, there's just a lot of interesting people in the Twitch community, and I really just need to talk to more of them. So for this episode, I have TrulyRawesome here with me, and I am so excited to have you on, and I'm glad that I convinced you to do this.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And you did have to convince me through my own imagined reasons that I was like, I shouldn't be on this podcast, but I'm really glad you did convince me because I'm very excited to chat.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that, everybody's interesting. Everybody has a story to tell. And I mean, I certainly find your streams very entertaining. Looking into, with your background and your profile and everything, I did notice that you started streaming in 2020, and that only leads me to believe that you were one of those people that was like, well, COVID's happening and I should do something. So I'm just curious if that's what happened there.
Yeah, I feel a bit, Christine, like I'm a bit of a broken record. That it's like, oh, I also started streaming in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. How original. But I'm gonna try to make it a little bit more original because there was a bit more to it than that, honestly. When the pandemic hit and we all went into quarantine, obviously a lot of people did turn into Twitch because it was this place that you could create this social environment that could keep everybody safe, and you could do something you loved, either whether it was chatting or playing games together or whatever the case might be. When I started streaming in June of 2020, I can honestly say that I had no grand ambitions about becoming a Twitch streamer or streaming regularly or being in the position I'm at now, where I can say that my time on Twitch has dramatically and measurably impacted my ability to live and survive in the years since. What I was doing in 2020 was I was talking with two of my best friends who lived so far away from me and so far away from each other that we were all we were forming this little triangle of locations across the continent who weren't able to see each other anymore. And we were all sort of saying to ourselves, hey, is anyone going to buy and play The Last of Us Part 2? And we decided, and I bought the bullet, and I was like, I'll buy the game and I'll stream it. And then you two can just watch me play it, and we can play it together through watching it. So that's actually the reason why I started streaming in 2020. It wasn't because I thought I was going to become this big Twitch streamer. I was just like, I have two friends. We all kind of want to play this game, but we're all a little unsure about it. I'll buy it and play it, and we can do this together. And then what happened was that people showed up, and people who weren't the two of them showed up regularly, and it was a lot of fun, and I really liked the social element. And I was like, well, I have other games on my backlog that I want to play. Maybe I'll just keep doing this. And yeah, here we are. Here we are over 4 years later. And if you had asked me 4 years ago in June of 2020 if I would be sitting here having streamed for that long, I would have told you no way. But it just worked out.
Well, I mean, I think that that's amazing. And I really enjoy Twitch because of that community aspect. And you don't necessarily expect to make friends. I mean, I certainly, when I was like, okay, I'm going to start watching streams, I didn't think I'm going to make friends from this. I was just like, oh, this is entertaining. It's a way to pass the time. But it's just interesting how that just is a development that comes from that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think it helped that, or when I started, it was about friendship. It was about creating a space where I was being entertaining for and with my friends as we were doing something together. And so like I think that just set it off on the right foot in a way that like has had a lot of unexpected and very like I'm very grateful and very like appreciative of like what that's become, because it's a big part of my life now.
Yeah, for sure. Now, at what point did you, like, in that process of streaming and having people come in, kind of make that decision that this was going to be something more than just streaming with, a few friends or anything like that?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know if there was honestly, when I think about a lot of the things that have happened with my stream over the last 4 years, so much of it has been so like kind of organic. And a lot of times I feel like it's happened because of the people who've watched almost as much, if not more, than because of me. So I can't say the exact moment when I was like, oh, this is something that I'm doing. That's kind of lost to time. But I can say that like that feeling came about because I was like, people want this to happen to a certain degree. And that's an amazing opportunity and something I'm so grateful for, that anybody would show up and say, I do want to see you do this. And so it was just getting that feeling and that feedback from the people who were watching me. And then I actually took like, compared to some other, friends of mine slash fellow streamers that you've interviewed, I came to the affiliate status rather late. It took about 8 months for me to get affiliate status because I really wasn't trying in any concrete way to build something. But once I hit the affiliate status, I was just kind of like, okay, like this is something that I gotta like put some time onto. I gotta put some like deliberate intent onto this. And that's when I started saying to myself, okay, like this is something that you can build on. And so I did. But I do really think that if I hadn't been getting that feeling, that feedback of we want you to go live, that never would have happened.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, really, I can relate to that so much because I certainly, when I started my podcast, I mean, it wasn't necessarily a thing to do with friends, but it was like I didn't think it was really going to be a thing. I was just like, hey, this is something cool that I can do for a while, and maybe I get to talk to some people, but I certainly didn't envision it getting to where it is now. And so it's a really exciting thing when that happens. And similarly, I don't feel it would have happened without having just such a great community around me of people that support and like what I do. So I really relate to that really heavily.
Mhm.
Now, one thing that I wanted to talk about, just to shift to that, is that you you recently became a doctor. And I really want to talk about that because I think that it's just like so cool and like a huge accomplishment to get your doctorate in anything. But I mean, to be able to do that in an area that you're really passionate about as well, I think is just great, to get to have that. And so I wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Of course. I've been a doctor now for about 2.5 weeks. So it's still new to me too. Like it's still kind of a wonder that I accomplished this multi-year journey, but that it's real. But yes, I as of 2.5 weeks ago, I have a PhD, a doctor of philosophy. Technically, I have an English PhD, but my expertise and my area of research and what I wrote my book length dissertation about is about video games. So I'm technically a game doctor. Um, and so and it's crazy because I know I was just in fact listening to it recently. I know you just spoke with Dr. Leandra, who also has a doctorate. And so it's when I talk about how grateful I am about being able to do Twitch, it really isn't like disconnected from the fact that I just got this doctorate. I had a moment a couple of weeks ago on stream after I successfully defended that I was like, it is not an exaggeration to say that like I did this because of the people who've supported me through the stream, because there was real financial support that I got over the last few years that have like, you may be surprised to hear graduate students don't make or get a lot of money. And so it truly meant the difference between being able to focus on that work and not. So I before I even talk about my doctorate, I have to acknowledge that because it's very important to me how much that made a difference over the last few years. But yeah, I guess like I came to my PhD. I came to grad school after a few years of a break after my undergrad. I went and did a master's, and my master's had nothing to do with video games. I wrote a master's thesis that was about just pop culture kind of generally, talking about comics and movies and everything. But then when I decided I wanted to go do a PhD, and I knew that this was going to be a significantly longer and more grueling commitment, I said to myself, I'm not going to do that unless it's about something that I like deeply enjoy and that I want to spend 4 to 6 years doing. And I just happened to land on an idea for a project related to video games. My research was specifically into the ubiquity, the over prevalence now, the like saturation of video games with ruins as particular environmental settings. Like, why are so many video games so heavily like influenced by the presence of ruins in their stories that like even Mario is running around in ruins, like let alone like your Final Fantasies, your Fallouts, you know, your things like this. And so I was like, why is that the case? And so for the next 6 years and up to 2.5 weeks ago, I set about answering that question through my research and being able to have something that I'm so like that I enjoy as a personal hobby and as like a casual way I spend my time, to have that be able to overlap with this research work I was doing helped keep me motivated at the hardest parts of doing that work. And so I'm very happy that I was able to go to an institution that supported me in that I was able to get like financial support and funding and everything to do that work. And I'm really excited to see where I can take that research that I've accomplished in the future. But yeah, it was. I don't think everybody who goes into grad school expects that they're going to be able to do something like that. Like, I think I again incredibly privileged to be able to say that I got like funding from my country's government to play video games for 6 years and produce like a substantial amount of work about it. So I didn't just like laze around and play games, but like I would be lying if I didn't say that like I played a lot of video games for the last 6 years and like I got a lot of support to be able to do that. And that is incredibly lucky. Not everybody gets to write about, not everybody gets to do work that involves that much of their hobby as part of the work.
That's true. Not everybody does. I think, I'm not a doctor, but when I was in college, I definitely attempted to insert the pop culture things and the things that I was personally interested into my work and projects as much as I possibly could get away with it. So
Yeah.
I understand. That's just
Mhm.
that's really cool that you had that opportunity.
Mhm.
Uh,
It's unfortunate that it isn't more common, right? That you're like, I know that one thing that I've spoken about with like my supervisor and my committee members for my PhD, that like we talked about the fact that like too often it's not until you get to the PhD level that you're really able to say, hey, I'm excited about this thing, and so I'm gonna make that the focus of my work. Um, but so many people are so passionate about so many like interesting things that like make for such interesting, knowledge production, like how does this thing work? Like how do these things work historically? How do they work in terms of like the social dynamics? Like how do they work in terms of human psychology? Like one of the really cool things about my field and the field of game studies is that there are people asking those questions about video games, and like I get to read about it and I get to respond and I get to do my own research into it. And yeah, it's a shame that that isn't more often available at like the lower levels of what we consider higher education.
I'm really curious in all of your time, studying video games and looking at it in that capacity, are there any things that you learned that you think would be really interesting for like the audience to ponder about video games? Like any cool little nuggets that you found?
Yeah, there was one that I encountered recently, and I brought it up on one of my streams recently too. This idea of like when we think about video games, we always, difficulty is something that we always talk about. And a lot of games, like the difficulty is a very important thing. Your Elden Rings, like how difficult can we make it? And so we often think about difficulty in just this one way, right? Like how hard is the game to play? But I read some stuff recently. It's not necessarily a recently published article, but I read some stuff recently about different kinds of difficulty in video games that we don't often talk about. That's really made me sort of think about this other element that goes undiscussed and kind of unexplored, which is difficulties that like are not about how hard the game is to play in terms of like pressing buttons and getting your timing right, but how difficult a game can be, for example, emotionally. There's this idea of affective difficulty, how emotionally difficult a game is to play. Like what it is that you have to kind of watch or experience or do in a game and how that affects you emotionally. And that to me is just a really interesting idea. It makes me think about moments I've had in video games. I cry at the end of so many video games that I play. I get very emotional, like when stories and characters that I love like end or have like difficult moments. Like I want that. I want to cry when I play a video game in a way. And so to me, it's really interesting to think about affective difficulty as this idea, not just about like how difficult emotionally it is to process what a game is doing, but how sometimes things can be difficult for us because they're like in a horror game, for example, like the being uncomfortable, being disturbed, being grossed out. These are like forms of difficulty that we encounter with games. And so I don't know. I guess I would say like, yeah, if you're playing a video game and you're encountering these things and you're seeing these like heightened emotions or you're feeling something when you play a game, like think about like that as part of the game's sort of design and its difficulty is like it's putting you through this and like how interesting that is that games as a medium can like both challenge us physically with like hands-on controllers, but also challenge us emotionally.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And speaking of difficulty and shifting back to talking about your stream, I really have to know how the Wheel of Punishments came about. Because for me personally, I don't think that I could let fate um, be out there in determining what kind of punishments I may get.
Yes. Oh, yes. I was like, there's no way we're making through this without talking about the Wheel of Punishment and all of its associated. It's so funny to me. So much of my time in grad school, which like overlaps so much with my time on stream, like my grad school life was professional and was working on research and it was difficult. And so much of how I've built elements of my stream are the exact opposite. I'm so goofy. I mess up all the time. I make mistakes. I fully don't learn how a game works until right before the end of it. And so there's a degree to which for me, streaming, part of the fun and part of the joy about it is like showing this other part of myself that's just as authentic as the serious part, which is the part of me that's like a bit of a goof and who is like catching L's for other people's amusement, a little bit of a jester kind of like side of my personality. The Wheel of Punishment originally was just an idea I had for an anniversary stream. It was like the 1 year anniversary of me streaming. And I just wanted to come up with some way that I could like create a fun interaction with my chat where people could like cause things to happen to me, like through gifting subs or giving bits or giving donations. But I was like deeply uncomfortable with the idea of asking people for money because I don't, I think I'm very privileged and very lucky to have received it, but that's my entire relationship to that is that it's very lucky and that I don't like it's not something I like deserve, but it's something that is a happy coincidence of what I've created. So I came up with this idea. It's like, well, okay, if I'm going to ask people to say sort of for this anniversary, give me $5 and something will happen on stream, I should also have to pay was the was the idea is that I should also have to pay. So I was like, so if you give me $5, I'll do something that is a punishment, is some kind of balancing of the scales, if you will. So I'll do a dab of incredibly hot sauce, or I'll eat a jelly bean that has a chance to have a nasty flavor, or I'll try to play a complicated game with socks on my hands, like whatever the case might be. And so that was just a one-off thing that I did, but then the idea was so resonant and like people really enjoyed it. And I don't know what it says. I have a lovely community, but they do like to punish me. And so it just sort of became more and more integrated into the stream until now it's just a part of it, like constantly. I have a huge backlog of punishments that I owe people. It comes up often. It's an integral part of the stream now, and it's this kind of check and balance between you support me and in return I entertain you with my own ultimately harmless suffering.
Well, I honestly, I think again, because we talk about like, interesting, I don't know that it's a philosophical thing, it's more of a behavioral thing, but like, I'm one of those people for sure that if I like somebody, I have this need to like do horrible things to them. As evidenced by the many rune bears that I've spawned on Totally Cal.
Yes.
If you're my friend, I'm probably going to do horrible things to you. So,
Mhm.
and I think a lot of people are that way. And it's just like, you just want to, like give you a challenge, like just give you a little bit of a challenge.
Exactly. And it's fun. Like ultimately it is all in good spirits and it's in good fun, and like I never do anything that makes me actually suffer. But it's just a kind of way to it's a little bit slapstick, and it's a little bit slapstick in a way that I enjoy giving that entertainment to people.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you can't like poke fun at yourself or whatever, like that's one of the best things that you
Mhm.
could be like have the courage to do, I think.
Mhm. It's
Now
also a complete distraction from my mid gameplay. So he's like, you won't notice that I'm not that good at the game because you're paying attention to the fact that like my mouth is on fire.
that I mean that's fair. That's totally fair. Now as I mentioned previously, I said that we were going to have to talk about cats at some point. And
Yes.
I know one of my favorite redeems on your channel is the Parade of Cats. As a owner of 4 cats, it is something that I appreciate very much. What is it? Because I think you're not the only person that like really likes to include their animals as part of their streams, but I think it's just a really cool thing, and it's a way to like be a little bit more personal with like something that means something to you in your life, to like share that with your audience.
Yeah, for sure. My cats are mine through my partner. They're my fiance's cats, and so when we moved in together, they became my cats. And there's 2 of them. Pico, they're both like adopted. Pico is a rescue cat. She was from a horrible hoarding situation. So she has a lot of issues that have developed from that, and she's single-handedly the most loving creature I have ever encountered. It's borderline desperate how much she like seeks out how much she seeks out um your attention and your love, and she like and it's hard to describe how much I love this cat for how much she expresses this love back towards me. And then our second cat, gray cat, is Pudge. He's a little bit more likes to seclude himself. He likes to stay away. He's a little bit more aloof. But he's also like quite a loving cat. And I'd never had pets as a child or as a teenager or even as an adult until I moved in with my partner. I am on record saying I didn't get it. I didn't understand pets. And now I think that past Ross is a fool, is an absolute fool, because I can't imagine like a world without these 2 cats in it. So when I was building the channel and when I was building my sort of setup, we have this little cat bed that's here. Like it's a cat carrier, but there's a blanket on top of it that the cats would sometimes use as a little cat bed. And I was like, I'm gonna get a second camera and point it at that, and then like be able to include them in the stream, in part because they would often hang out there with me. Like Pudge in particular likes it because he doesn't have to get too close to me and make himself uncomfortable, but he can like be nearby, which is what he likes. And so again, a circumstance where my cats just lent themselves so well to giving something beautiful to the stream that is like not of my own doing. It's just their loveliness. And all my emotes are based on the two of them. And they're just, I'm very lucky to have had them come into my life. And I like that I can sort of set things up so that other people can like see them, and other people who appreciate cats and like who have their own like fond memories of pets uh, can sort of get a little joy out of seeing them every now and then.
It's amazing how cats paw their way into your heart, because like no one ever was is also someone who did not previously own cats. And as soon as we got our first cat, he was like, when can we get another cat?
They'll get you.
They
They'll get
they
you.
do. They really do get you. Now since you've been able to build up your stream, and I think you, like so many others, have a really wonderful community. Is there anything that you're working on, or have in the works, or any goals that you have for what that may look like in the future?
For sure. So I'm very blessed to have like a very wonderful small community on Twitch. Like we're not a huge group of people, but we're very, I think, pretty tight knit, and like we have a lot of fun together. And but I am sort of in the process of trying to build that out. And so I set myself a goal to hit 750 followers before the end of this year. We just hit 600 followers on stream earlier this week, which was very exciting. And so I'm trying to build that out more. I've put a lot of work and time and thought in collaboration with people who are within my community to build different ways that like people can be involved and be interacting with the stream. So we do a lot of things like you know, sort of built off and based off of my grad school experience. We have something that we do bi-weekly called the assignment, where people can submit in ideas in response to a topic to try to like gain points that go towards giveaways and stuff that we do. And people get their own custom commands if they do really well. So I've been trying to, my method for trying to build the stream has always been to try to like preserve the things that I value the most about the space that I'm in with these people. And so it's all about creating opportunities for people to engage, to be involved, to be a part of it. And we want to grow that, but we don't want to grow it, or at least I don't want to grow it in a way that causes us to have those things that make it so enjoyable for the people now slip through our fingers. So I wouldn't say that I'm pursuing growth for growth's sake, but I really do. For me, it's about creating a space where people can like come in and be part of a group of people that has a lot of fun, often at my expense, and I'm happy to provide that. And that like if that results in the kind of growth that I'm looking to achieve, if that involves getting up to 750 followers, if that involves like, pushing beyond that into the future as I want to do, that to me is secondary to ensuring that I preserve the best parts of what I've already stumbled into and built over the last few years.
Yeah, I
Also,
couldn't agree more with that sentiment.
yeah. Also, just like working as much as I can through the incredible backlog of games that my viewers have created for me to play. That, I guess that's the biggest goal, is to try to get those games played.
Yeah, having a backlog is hard. I know for me, it's usually because I get fixated on one game for a while, and then I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I have other games that I was planning on playing. Why am I still doing this? Yeah, no, that's really great. I mean, I think that, having those goals is good, but like you said, you want to make sure that you're gaining that traction in the right way, and that you're not like totally taking away the reasons that you were doing everything in the first place. So I think that that's awesome. Now, if people want to find your channel and check out what you're doing, where can they do that?
Yeah, of course. So you can find me at twitch.tv/TrulyRawesome, TrulyRawesome. I'm there on a pretty regular schedule now. It has shifted up a little bit because I also teach full time right now, but I'm there on right now. I'm streaming Mondays and Wednesdays from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern. And then on Saturdays or the weekend, I usually have some kind of collaboration stream with other streamer friends of mine, with good friends of mine who don't stream. Just try to do something more community based where we just have people come together and we get to goof off together. And I'm not the only person who's on mic talking. But that's our current schedule. We're doing a lot of fun stuff right now. We're currently playing Chained Echoes is the current community chosen game that I'm playing. Having a blast with it. We just started, and I'm looking forward to keep going with that.
Awesome. Well, for those who are watching, please check out TrulyRawesome and follow on Twitch. It's completely free, and I guarantee a good time if you do. So let's get TrulyRawesome to 750 followers. I think that's a great place to be. Well, I thank you for joining me and coming on and letting my viewers know a little bit more about you and what you do. And for those that are watching, if you are not already subscribed to this channel, please make sure that you do that, and like, follow, comment, all of those things. Thank you for watching, and we will see everybody next time on the show.